If you're uninsurable, you can still do infinite banking. It's not the end of the journey. You're just going to take a different road. Hello and welcome to the Durham Talents channel. My name is Jesse Durham. For today's installation in our book review series of Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash, this is part 23. We are in the fifth part of the book, What If I Am Uninsurable? That's page 82 through 84. I recently discussed this topic of being uninsurable in our encyclomedia series. So as you make your way through our book review series, I hope that you check these terms out. This is a body of encyclomedia that I have been compiling to address these terms and the implications behind them for those of us that are implementing or looking to implement infinite banking in our lives. So I'm going to share that information with you now, because Nelson discusses how just because you yourself are deemed uninsurable doesn't mean that you can't implement this concept on someone that you have an insurable interest in. That could be a spouse, that could be a child, that could be a sibling, it could be a business partner. And that's why you need to have a private consultation with whoever it is that you're working with. Of course, you can find me at durhamtalents.com. to be able to come up with a custom plan, finding that insurable interest that you have in another person. But again, to give you an example for myself, my wife and I have 3 children. I own policies on other individuals that I have insurable interest in as well. So make sure to revisit page 82, 83, 84 in Nelson's book as you consider these topics that I discuss. Now, uninsurable simply means that you are not insurable. You're not eligible for insurance from an insurance company. So there's actuarial science behind this. The insurance companies that we would use have all been in business for well over 100 years, and they've been profitable in those 100 years. So they have these parameters where actuarial science tells them what fits in those parameters. Now, if you have been deemed uninsurable, let's actually talk through that, because you may be uninsurable for a period of time, because folks can be deemed uninsurable at a given moment for many different reasons. You may also have been told, while you're uninsurable at this time, we're going to reconsider, be willing to reconsider, the insurance company would say this, a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever they might say. So every case is specific, but when someone is denied at that time, there may even be an opportunity to reapply, because some things can change. Something on your record could phase out. Some health issue could dissipate. So let's talk through some of those aspects. Remember, for properly structured whole life insurance from mutual companies that pay dividends, there's going to be a guaranteed death benefit. There's going to be a guaranteed cash value. So folks will often ask me, and they'll be surprised, well, I didn't think that I was so bad in this, or that this on my record was such a bad thing. So the insurance company is considering your whole life. So I'm using that term obviously to a point. So your driver history, your criminal background, your financial standing, your health, just to name some, are all aspects that the insurance company is going to evaluate to see if your life fits in the actuarial scientific parameters that they're limiting themselves to. Now, Nelson talks at length about this, and it's worth revisiting in his Becoming Your Own Banker book. Creating the entity on page 36 is a good place to revisit for that. So just remember, the insurance company is going to be asking lots of questions about lots of aspects of your life, and if there's some question that comes up, they're going to ask you for further questions and then either deem you insurable or uninsurable. So again, indeed, if you are designated as uninsurable, the insurance company is just saying that the risk that they would assume by accepting you as a policyholder is outside of the parameters that they've set for themselves to be a profitable, long-standing mutual life insurance company. Now, my question, of course, to you is, are you actually uninsurable? Because some people just show up thinking that, well, I've got this or I've got that. I'm probably uninsurable. Let's just automatically start talking about a policy on a child or a business partner or whoever. In my philosophy, and I would say in Nelson's, you're going to see this, that the place to start is on yourself for multiple reasons. Typically, it's going to be an older generation that is considering legacy and intergenerational finances. So it makes sense to have the protection, the death benefit, the coverage on the older generation to account for the financial needs of the future generations moving forward. Also, as a principle, leading by example. Nelson always talked about how infinite banking is more caught than taught. So leading by example by showing not just what it is to own whole life insurance and account for the death benefit and the protection and the coverage, which is so valuable. It's a great place to start. But by leading that family or that business as the person who's actually owning and using a specifically designed whole life policy for infinite banking. Leading by example. Those are great reasons to start with yourself. Now, if indeed you are uninsurable, it is time to consider who it is that you have an insurable interest in. So remember that you are your most valuable asset. You should start for yourself. But after that, should we be looking at a spouse? Should we be looking at children? Should we be looking at business partners? Should we be looking at some other family member and having a very custom conversation around your goals, your plans, your connections, what it's going to look like best moving forward for you? Now, one more point on if you are approved for a policy. So you're not uninsurable. You are approved for a policy, but perhaps you're not approved at a rating that would allow for an optimal design on a whole life insurance policy. Meaning, there are some cases where an individual is going to qualify for term insurance, of course, but even they could qualify for whole life insurance policies and pay significant premiums. So still do infinite banking. You could still pay a significant amount of premium for a significant amount of death benefit, but because you wouldn't be able to probably attach the paid up additions rider on a policy, just to give one example, that's going to be not as optimal as we would like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should completely disregard being approved by an insurance company for a whole life insurance policy. And let me give you some reasons why. A guaranteed death benefit based on your health and age now, which typically speaking are only going to deteriorate or advance moving forward. We're all certainly just going to get older moving forward, and perhaps we won't be as healthy 1 year from now, 10 years from now, as we are today. So being able to lock in a guaranteed death benefit, a guaranteed protection and coverage that's going to facilitate a tax-free, income tax-free transfer of wealth to the next generation is very worthwhile. That's one aspect. Another aspect is that the policy is going to be able to allow you to still hedge against inflation, considering the times and your time frame of capitalizing the policy. It can still be a hedge against inflation and play into those plans. It obviously creates a tax-free environment for you to be able to access capital, although it would build slower than a policy that has a paid up additions rider. There's no question about it. But again, I'd still point you back to Nelson's own example. He had plain whole life insurance from the start before he conceived of the idea of becoming your own banker and optimally designing policies to build cash value even sooner. He did infinite banking with base only whole life insurance. And the dividends can do some really cool things to help supplement passive income later in life. You can always decide to RPU a policy, reduce paid up. So maybe just because it's a base only policy, a standard whole life policy, perhaps you have a plan to capitalize the policy, and then there will come a time where it will play into your plans to reduce paid up that policy, so you won't have any more outgoing premiums to that policy, but you're still rendering a death benefit. You still created this tax-free income for yourself. And it's also worth mentioning that whole life insurance can be treated differently than other assets that you own when it comes to litigation. And it's private and it's easy to manage, and there are lots of attributes that just make even a plain whole life insurance policy worth your consideration. That's what I'm proposing. Now, another note worth mentioning is that it also may be possible that if you didn't get the rating that you wanted or were denied by some company, it may be possible, certainly not likely, certainly not probably, but it may be possible to apply with a different company and get a different result. Not typically though, because all of these companies that are over 100 years established, profitable, long-standing, they're very similar. I mean, actuarial science just is what actuarial science is. But I'm saying that it may be a possibility to check with another insurance company. And I myself represent more than one insurance company. And then reinsurance is even another option. So that probably needs its own standalone video, so look for that coming soon. But reinsurance may be another option to get coverage for yourself the way that you want it. But you also need to know the pros and the cons. So if you're in this situation, we're obviously going to be having conversations if you're my client, but I'm putting this information out for the general public as well. Now, I can also tell you that just this week, I had a beautiful conversation with an individual who, when he learned about infinite banking, applied for a policy, found out that at that time he was uninsurable, and they were able to continue. They got a policy on his wife and began infinite banking, and it's a beautiful story on how they've used infinite banking in their lives. But there's some merit to these medical exams and pursuing getting a policy on yourself, because it's just another step in being more cognizant about health. And that was the case for this gentleman, was that it was an inspiration point for him to go out and do something about a health issue that he was able to begin to remedy and address for himself. And he put himself in a healthier position, which is always great. I mean, of course, I want everyone to be as healthy as possible. And again, when it comes to implementing a system of policies over time, I mean, that's pretty much the only time I'm going to get excited about standing on a scale or peeing in a cup and getting my blood tested or whatever, is because it means we can get more policies. So I'm just telling you, it's been my experience that it's just another motivator to folks to be healthy, stay healthy, and get healthy. And there have been folks that have improved their health so much that they were able to get insurance, whereas before they were not able to, which is really cool. Eventually, though, when we are certain that you are uninsurable, we're going to address the question of who do you have an insurable interest in. I mean, my wife, we have a policy on my wife. We own policies on all of our children. Our children are minors, so they cannot own the policies. We're the payers on the policy. We're the owners of the policy. We're the beneficiaries of those policies, but the policy is not on our life. That's on our sons and on our daughter. And then we own other policies. So we need to be looking for where you have an insurable interest, where you could be the owner of a policy that is on someone else's life. Now here I'll share another story, because this was disheartening. I'll tell you, this was a bit disheartening for me. I had a conversation not too long ago with an individual who was looking to get a policy on himself. He'd had a career change, was making better money, really happy for him. And he wanted to get a policy on himself. He was really, honestly, still looking at a whole life policy. While he knew that it was going to be optimally designed and with a good company, he was really looking at it as a glorified savings vehicle, a place to put money. He wasn't so deep in his understanding of infinite banking to actually want to do it. But he understood the value of whole life insurance, built well for warehousing capital. And it turned out that he was denied. He was uninsurable. And I asked this question: because this gentleman was turned off from pursuing the idea further, which to each their own. I'm not here to push anyone. I'm here to promote the idea that you can become your own banker. And what I asked this gentleman, and what I would ask you, is if you're in this situation of being uninsurable, don't be disheartened. Who would you have put? Let's say you had have gotten the policy on yourself. If it's on your life, you have to put someone else as the beneficiary. It's not going to be you. It's on your life. Who would you have put as the beneficiary? Okay, for this gentleman, it would have been his daughter. So my question was, well, why not then get a policy on your daughter, and instead of buying capital, instead of buying coverage, death benefit, how about you build death benefit? How about you build protection? How about you build coverage? How about you build capital? Because if you would have had your daughter as the beneficiary on your policy, that was on your life when you died, she would have gotten that money. Why not just build that money now? You want to put money into a whole life policy, build that capital, build that protection, build that coverage, warehouse that wealth in that policy. It doesn't have to be on you. Now, Nelson actually has a chapter in his book. It's brief. It's the second to the last. What If I'm Uninsurable, page 82. And it has a page of details and then a chart to be able to give you some examples. I'd encourage you to check out that part of the book. But remember, whoever you would have considered giving the death benefit to, consider getting a policy on that individual. It's still a private asset that you can own and operate and use now in your lifetime so that you can live a legacy out with your family, your business, whatever it is that you're going to do. And then that's a private asset that you can just transfer to that individual at the time of your death or at the time that you choose, because it's just a private asset. You can just transfer that ownership to that individual at a time of your choosing. Now, of course, the example that Nelson gives, which is just one, again, this is the infinite banking concept. You can use infinite banking for financing your lifestyle, for financing investments, for financing educations, for financing vacations in your family, whatever it is that you want to do. The one example that Nelson, of course, is showing here is that when the uninsured father was insuring his daughter and building capital in that policy, he was able to, if he had chosen to, use that policy at any point. But the illustration that he gives is a passive income example. And you just see year after year after year of supplementing income in a very passive way from the policy and then still rendering a death benefit to the same daughter that was insured. Now, he could have made his wife the beneficiary first, of course, as well. So again, that just points to the reason and need of having ongoing conversations with your agent, your advisor, so that you can get things dialed in the way that you want. But the uninsurable father was able to insure his daughter, build capital in the policy, grow it, compound it, have access to it. It played into his passive income plans later in life. Still, he could have covered his spouse with the death benefit in the event, unlikely, but in the event that his daughter would have preceded his wife in death. And then, of course, ultimately, it was a intergenerational transfer of wealth from that father that started the policy to his daughter. And that windfall can facilitate what Nash describes elsewhere in the Bible. I almost said in the Bible, in the banking Bible. Elsewhere in the book about the windfall from the first generation completes a self-sufficient system from there moving forward. So it's just really cool seeing all those different aspects of legacy, passive income, and then the thinking, the process behind what was started. And again, he finishes the section by saying that if she follows the principles of infinite banking, the illustration cannot cover the experience that she could have or that you could have. So I hope that this has been as fun for you to revisit as it is for me. I have children. We anticipate our growing family implementing this concept at a higher and a higher level. If that's you, let's have a conversation about how we can dial in whatever it is that you already have going on. And perhaps it's time for you to consider taking your infinite banking to the next level. To be able to have that conversation, I'm looking forward to speaking with you. You can find me at durhamtalents.com. This has been a great pleasure for me. Live and leave a lasting legacy. Have a great day. Take care.